Today's disaster in the air was one of the deadliest ever. But if, as the U.S. government now believes, the Malaysian Airlines flight was hit by a missile, it wouldn't be the first time a commercial airliner was shot out of the sky. So what do past incidents tell us about what may have happened here? Here's ABC's senior national correspondent, Jim Avila.
Here's what investigators are facing. A debris field stretching for miles. The main impact zone thoroughly charred. The fuselage from the aluminum frame to the human bodies decimated. But a few miles away, entire intact chunks still carrying the airline's color scheme. Bodies still recognizable in a residential neighborhood. The voice recorder on board, which tapes the conversations of the pilots in the cockpit and to the ground, are unlikely to have recorded much more than an explosion. The captain and first officer would not have seen a speeding missile coming their way, and the passengers literally never knew what hit them.
The effect of being suddenly thrust into a depressurized situation at 33,000 feet means that you're going to be possessed of only a couple of seconds, really, of useful consciousness before you black out, even if the stunning effect of whatever explosion might have occurred here hadn't already knocked you out.
On the ground, everywhere you turn, clues of what brought this workhorse of the international long-distance air fleet down from 33,000 feet.
When you see wreckage and people still strapped in their seats along a path of 5-10 miles like we have here, it indicates the airplane most definitely split up at higher altitude and dumped not only people out, but dumped the entire floor section and sections of the fuselage. And that's indicative of an explosion.
And Nance says because so many of the pieces show no evidence of fire, that indicates an explosion from an outside source. Where it happened points to a missile.
This is a war zone, and people are firing at each other, and it is possible for somebody to mistake an airliner, even at 33,000 feet, for a hostile airplane. It's happened before, at least twice.
In both cases, the civilian planes were somehow seen as threats to the countries that shot them down.
That was a dead on!
On July 3rd, 1988, an Iranian airliner with 290 people on board en route from Tehran to Dubai, when it was shot down over the Persian Gulf by a missile fired from a U.S. Navy ship. The USS Vincennes had been exchanging gunfire with Iranian gunboats that day and mistakenly took the A330 Airbus for an Iranian fighter jet. And 5 years before that, in September 1983, a Korean passenger plane with 269 on board was shot down by a Russian fighter jet after it accidentally strayed into then Soviet airspace. The Soviet government first denied involvement.
Let us now listen to the tape.
But at the UN Security Council, audio tapes made it clear it was a deliberate act.
In both of those cases, there had been something else going on in the area the day before. In the Ukrainian case, something was shot down the day before. So it's possible that people on both sides of the border, Russia and Ukraine, were seeing it through the lens of the continuing activity that's been going on that border and thinking this was not a passenger plane, but thinking it was a military plane.
In this case, denial is possible again. The ethnic Russian opposition controls the Ukrainian land where the plane crashed, and the rebels claim to have already confiscated those crucial black boxes, vowing to send them to Russia. Former NTSB Director Tom Howder tells ABC News the data inside them cannot be altered without detection.
It's very easy to tell if somebody has tampered with that data. So I'm not overly concerned about that. The key now is to get that data to the authorities as quickly as possible, get the specialists on hand, and download the information.
Perhaps of more concern is the integrity of the crash site itself. In a war zone, maintaining a crime scene is not always the first priority.
That's a major concern, that anytime you have an uncontrolled accident site, parts vanish. It's just the way it is. We don't want that to happen here. And obviously, if they start removing parts, they may remove parts that are critical to the investigation. They don't know what they have. And so there needs to be some control over the site because any part that walks off, if you will, may be the critical part to help understand what happened here.
A 10-mile debris path with clues, answers, and the victims that carry them, now all guarded by hostiles, perhaps even the people who shot them down. For Nightline, I'm Jim Avila in Washington.
FBI officials will now be heading to Ukraine to aid in the crash investigation.